to Steam Time. My name is Dayna. I am the Buena Vista Branch Manager with Monterey County Free Libraries, and today we're going to be talking all about chemical reactions. So this is Chemical Reactions Part 2. Last Steam Time, we took a look at the chemical reaction that happens when you mix milk and dish soap. So if you're interested in that one, go ahead and take a look at that video. But for today, we are going to take a look at what happens when you mix baking soda with vinegar. It's going to create a chemical reaction that is acid-based. So stay tuned and let's jump into it. So before we jump into doing the actual experiment, let's talk a little bit first about the supplies that you are going to need. Super simple experiment, and it does not require very many things. So you're going to want to have baking soda on hand. This is also called sodium bicarbonate, any brand of baking soda, vinegar, a measuring spoon. You're going to want clear containers, could be glass, could be plastic, anything you have on hand will work. I just used blender cups. And then you're going to want to have some type of tray or plate to sit your cups on. And you're going to see why later if you haven't done this experiment before. And then food coloring, that is optional. You do not have to have it. If you have it on hand, great. It just adds some fun colors once we mix the two chemicals together. But aside from that, those are the supplies that you are going to need. Dish soap, if you have it on hand, go ahead and grab it, because after we complete our experiment, we're going to see what happens when we add in teeny bit of dish soap. So stay tuned and let's go ahead and get started. Now that we have gathered the supplies that we need for today's experiment, let's talk a little bit about the science behind the chemical reaction. So the science is when you mix an acid, which is the vinegar, with an alkali, which is the baking soda or sodium bicarbonate, they mix together to create a gas called carbon dioxide. And so when the two chemicals meet, they instantly create the gas, and gases like to expand. So that is the bubbling reaction you are going to see when we mix the two together. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we do, the thing about science, you don't have to be exact. If you want to use measuring spoons, that is a really great way to add in the math component of STEAM. It's also a great way to really talk about measurements. Today I'm going to be using half a tablespoon as mine, but it can be any measurements that you would like, depending on how big you want the eruption to be. Side note, as with any experiment that you're doing, make sure that you have an adult around and an adult's permission before you start doing this experiment at home. Okay, so before we get started, we are going to get our ingredients ready. We're going to start with, I'm going to start with a spoonful of baking soda in each of my clear cups. And remember, make sure it's sitting on a tray, because this can get quite messy depending on how big you let the eruption go. You know what? I'm going to add another one. Let's see what kind of chemical reaction we can get. Okay, so I did 2 spoonfuls of baking soda. I'm going to pour my vinegar. I already have a little bit of red food coloring in my little cup. You don't have to use food coloring. That's not going to change the chemical reaction between the vinegar and the baking soda. It's more just a visual component of it that makes it look kind of cool. But if you don't have food coloring, don't worry about it. You don't truly need that part. We're also going to be incorporating baking soda in just a little bit, because that can help create an extra layer to the bubbles. So let's see what happens first when we mix our vinegar, which is our acid, with our baking soda, which is our alkali, and when we mix them together, they're going to create an acid-base reaction, and they're going to create that gas called carbon dioxide. Are you ready? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Let's see how big we can get this. Whoa, see if it'll go up over the cup. Am I gonna do it? There you go. And it's such a simple yet really cool experiment because you instantly see what happens when you mix vinegar and baking soda. So we're gonna try this now with a touch of dish soap and see what happens to our bubbles. When you add the soap, it's supposed to create more bubbles, but let's test that theory and see if it actually works. So what I'm going to do is leave the cups as is, no need to rinse them out or start over. We're just gonna add to what we're already doing. So go ahead and fill your little cup or your eyedropper, whatever you're using for your vinegar. Fill it up again. I'm gonna add a little bit more red food coloring to my vinegar just for show. And let me get the baking soda again. And we have our dish soap because we're going to need that. Okay. So let me add another scoop to each of them. And there's already vinegar in there, so you might start to see a little bit of a chemical reaction based on what we already had in there. Okay, I'm gonna have my dish soap at the ready. I'm gonna start with 1 to 2 squeezes. I wouldn't do too much, and you can test that too. The more you add, the bigger the reaction we may get. Okay, so let's go ahead and add in our acid component to our sodium bicarbonate or baking soda and create that carbon dioxide gas reaction. And we're gonna have our bubbles, squeeze in some dish soap, and it just keeps on going. Very cool. I hope you guys enjoyed doing this baking soda and vinegar experiment with me. There's a lot of ways that you can change this up, test different things, play around with measurements and amounts of each and see how that changes the reaction. Maybe more baking soda than vinegar and vice versa, and see how that changes the chemical reaction. So thank you guys so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you guys for our next STEAM time. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Happy experimenting.